Hi friends, I'm Steph Góngora, also known as Casa Colibri on social media. I'm a yoga teacher based in Ubita, Costa Rica, and today I want to take you through my beginner-friendly but all levels hip opening flow. This is one of the dozen or so flows that are included in my The Beginner's Guide to Starting a Yoga Practice book, which is available on my website, casacolibri.com, in print or ebook. And I just wanted to offer this flow as kind of example of some of my more basic, slower teaching with attention to modifications, prop usage, and of course alignment, which is really important to me. I'm not really I know I do a lot of fancy poses sometimes on social media, but what has allowed me to progress to that level is attention to detail in the seemingly more basic postures and just moving consciously through transitions with core integration and always being focused on body awareness. So you're going to need a few props for today, or suggested props. They're not necessary, just suggested. I like to have 2 blocks. If you don't have blocks, then good sturdy books work just fine. I have a blanket. Towels work great. A sweatshirt works great. It's usually just for under the knee or perhaps for a wrapped position later. And then a strap. And I didn't have a strap handy, so I just grabbed a scarf. A men's tie works wonderful. And in the spirit of hip opening, we are going to start in reclined butterfly or Supta Baddha Konasana. And what that looks like is a diamond shape with the legs. So we plant the soles of the feet together, tuck the tailbone under just slightly to elongate the low back. And then we lay down, comfortably resting our hands by our sides or on our puppies. Now, if this isn't comfortable for you, because you want to be able to relax the hips open, what you can do is take your blocks and gently place them under your knees or your thighs, just giving yourself something to rest into. Allow your eyes to close here. Feel the length of your spinal column sinking into your mat. Try to settle your shoulders down onto the mat. Collarbones drip open. Soften the space between your eyebrows. And just begin to settle into this space, this time that you've set aside for yourself, for your body to practice on your mat. Perhaps starting to deepen the breath just slightly. A light constriction at the back of the throat warms the breath as you inhale slowly through the nose. And then exhale slowly through the nose. Slight sound, almost like you were fogging the back of a mirror. Just allowing yourself this transition time. We live in a very busy world. It can be so helpful to just wait just a few moments, just a few breaths to get in the right mindset for your yoga. Take one more deep inhale through the nose. And as you get to the top, resting at the crown of their head, hold it. Feel the breath stirring around inside of you. And then part the lips, sigh it out, release. Exhale. If you have blocks underneath your knees, gently move them to the side. Stretch your legs out long, your arms up overhead. Length from your fingertips down to your toes. Keeping your left leg as it is, hug your right knee in towards your chest. Take both hands around your shin. Gently pull the thigh into the low belly. Your left toes are still active, so make sure they're facing towards the sky, whether they're flexed or pointed. And then once you've hugged the right knee in towards the chest, bring it out to the side just slightly, towards the right armpit, keeping it close to the right side ribs. We're trying to reach long through the left leg here as we pull up and in through the right leg, sending some stretch to the left quad, the left hip flexor, and starting to open up the right hip. Gently releasing, switching sides, extending the right leg long, pulling the left knee in first towards the chest. Hands around the shin. Keep the right toes active. I am outside of the jungle, so you guys will have to allow me to apologize for the noises, whether it's the cicadas or the dirt bikes passing by or construction or puppies barking. And then once you've hugged it in towards the central line, move it out slightly towards the left armpit. See if you can drip both shoulders down onto the mat. If it's not accessible for you to grab around your left shin, you can always just grab behind your left thigh and use the strength of your left hamstring to curl the heel in towards the sit bone as much as you can. It does not need to reach all the way into the left armpit, this left knee, so please don't force it. It's the beginning of class, so we want to move slowly. Extend the left leg long, stretch the toes, wiggle them, roll the ankles to wake them up. And then moving into a reclined pigeon position, keep the left leg as is, flex the right toes firmly. Cross the right leg over the left, bending firmly into the right knee, flexing the right toes here, creating a figure 4 position. Our right knee goes out wide. My ankle is sitting on top of my left thigh here. Now, if this is enough stretch to just let the right knee drip down onto the mat, that's fine. Otherwise, you can bend the left knee, planting the sole of the left foot, increasing the stretch slightly. Keeping the right foot firmly active and flexed here. So that means toes towards the knee, inner ankle towards the midline, because that's going to send the stretch into the hip instead of the right knee, which is what we want. Now, if this still is not enough, you can lift the left shin, gently pulling the legs in towards the chest. Keep widening the right knee out. Reach the hands through and grab behind the left thigh, or curl the hamstring in. Reach the hands around the left shin. Again, we can take our right elbow here and gently press into the right inner thigh to widen the right knee out just a little bit further. Keep flexing both feet firmly. Maybe rocking back and forth just gently on the sacrum here. Again, going as far as your body wants you to today. The hips are very different for different people, and they're also very different on a day-to-day basis. So don't push something just because it feels different or tighter than yesterday. Always paying attention to the knees here. We want to keep pain out of the knees. The stretch goes to the hip, which is why we keep really active ankles. Slowly release, first bringing the left foot to the ground, then straightening it before we uncross the right and squeeze the right leg straight here. After we do deep flexion of the knee or the hip, it's always nice to straighten the leg, re-engage those muscles. Planting the right leg firmly and straight, flex the toes, flex the left toes, cross the left ankle over the right thigh, figure 4 position. Allow that left knee to drip down towards the mat. Trying to keep both sit bones evenly planted, both shoulders weighty on the mat. You can stay here or bend your right leg so you can plant the sole of your right foot, keeping the left knee widening out, keeping the left foot nice and active, left ankle nice and active. We don't want sickling ankles either, so think about hugging the inner ankle towards the midline while we widen the left knee out. If you'd like more, lift your right shin. Maybe bring it in closer towards your torso, weaving your hands around your right thigh or even your right shin. Moving back into our reclined pigeon here. Both feet are firmly flexed. Maybe the left elbow presses gently into the left inner thigh. Maybe we rock back and forth just slightly on the sacrum. Always giving ourselves a little bit more time in these early hip openers in general. Like back bends, they require slow, steady time to open, using the breath to help us get there. So never go as far as where you can't breathe. If you cannot breathe in a posture, you have gone too far. Back out a little bit, refine the breath, and then enter in. Because with every exhale, we may find we're able to soften just slightly, even if that doesn't manifest into a physical movement. Softening just slightly, finding more space in the pose. Release the right foot back to the earth and then extend the right leg long. Extend the left leg, squeeze the knees. Hug both knees in towards your chest. Take your hands to your knees, even allow your knees to open just slightly towards the armpits and begin to rock along the spine, creating some movement here. You'll need to round through the spine to do this without clunking or smashing onto your back. We're going to rock all the way up to a seat and then make our way into a tabletop position. Here in our tabletop position, my wrists are under my shoulders, my knees are under my hips. I turn my hands out slightly. That gives me more mobility in my wrists and also starts the tricep wrap. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we see this blasting of the elbows forward, whether it's in downward facing dog, plank pose, or tabletop. That's not very stable for the shoulder girdle. It's also really bad for hypermobile people like me who have overbent or over straight elbows. So And in addition, it's not really using the muscles of the arms, which is one of the main purposes of these postures. So wing your elbows out wide, out to the side, and then wrap them towards the back of the mat, keeping a micro bend. So that's a light bend in the elbows here, so that you can almost feel like your arms are turned on. You're not just blasting out. Your arms are turned on, almost like you were wrapping your hands away from each other, screwing on jar lids away from each other, or squeezing an imaginary block between your forearms. Engage your core, so navel pulls towards the spine. Not so much that you go into a cat position, but maintaining a neutral spine. Just pull your navel in slightly. Hug to the inner edges of your knees, so squeeze that imaginary block between your shins as well. Our legs tend to get lazy in this pose. And lead out long through the crown of the head. Shifting the weight into the left hand and right shin. Extend the left leg long behind you. See if you can do this without moving the hips. They tend to sag or move around a little bit. So without transferring much of the weight, can you extend the left leg behind you? Stay here or tent the right fingertips. Stay here or slowly extend the right arm out. See if you can give it tiny pulses, both the leg and the arm here, without going into a deep back bend, without losing integration of the core here. So the movement comes mostly from the limbs. Just warming up our hamstrings, warming up our body stabilizer muscles as well. Pause. Next exhale, pulls your right elbow in towards your left knee. Puff up the back of the heart. So think cat pose here. Feel the shoulder blades separate. Push the ground away. Hug everything in. And slowly release. Told you guys the dogs might get a little bit crazy. I apologize in advance. So moving to the other side here. Come back into your tabletop, wing your elbows wide. Wrap them towards the back of the mat. Keep that micro bend. Fingertips spider into the earth here. Navel pulls towards spine. Without moving your pelvis, extend the right leg long. Maybe tent the left fingertips. Maybe extend the left arm long. If you're here, tiny pulses, keeping the spine stable. This movement comes from the limbs. Pause. Next exhale pulls you in towards the midline. Left elbow towards the right knee. Push them together. Puff the back of the heart. Feel the shoulder blades separate as you push the ground away. Slowly release. Just give our wrists a little bit of love here, turning them different directions. We ask a lot of our wrists, even in basic yoga postures or seemingly basic yoga postures like tabletop and downward facing dog. So just turning your hands in different directions if it feels comfortable, putting more or less weight on them while you do so, adding in some rocking movements, maybe turning your fingertips towards your knees, rocking back just gently to stretch the forearms. This one's always pretty intense for me. Take as much time as you need here if you ever need wrist breaks. More of my other flows will have wrist strengthening and stabilizing, which is really important. We're just not going to do too much heavy wrist work today. But whatever you need, take a break. Coming back into our neutral tabletop, wing your elbows wide, wrap them towards the back of the mat. Moving into cat-cow here. So on your next inhale, I want you to think about drinking the ground up through your fingers like straws, keeping the engagement of the core, so navel pull to spine. Pull your heart through your bicep. Allow your sit bones to tilt up. Press the back of the head back just gently. My navel is still engaged to my spine here. This isn't a dump. My elbows are still wrapped, so I'm not hyperextending. Cow pose. As you exhale, push the ground down and away from you. Puff the back of your heart. Suck your navel firmly towards your spine. Inhale, reverse. Exhale, push down and away, cat pose. Continuing to move slowly with the breath, not rushing into these postures. Paying more attention to holding the integration of the core, feeling the fluidity of the spine as it moves. Return to your breath if you've lost it. Take one more here, one more full round. So an inhale through cow and an exhale through cat. And then come back to neutral tabletop. Wing your elbows wide. Wrap them towards the back of the mat. Micro bend here. Tuck the toes. Squeeze your imaginary block between your forearms. Squeeze your imaginary block between your thighs. Push your hands down and away from you. See if you can use the power of pulling in your low belly and pushing the hands down and away to hover your knees for just a moment. And then slowly, much slower than you want to, send the hips up and back, downward facing dog. If you need to adjust the length of your down dog, I usually do for my tabletop. You can walk your hands forward. And this is the first downward facing dog of the practice, so bend the knees firmly. Give yourself some time to step it out, bringing lubrication to the hamstrings, the calves, the shoulders. So many things play an important part in downward facing dog. So don't feel like you have to find stillness right away. And then once you feel a little bit more mobile, you can keep a generous bend into your knees here. There's no need to lock out the knees. We're trying to think long spine more than anything. That's the important part of downward facing dog. So again, take your head up for just a second. Glance at your hands, glance at your arms. Wing your elbows wide. Now wrap them towards the back of the mat. See if you can feel those shoulder blades separate. What this looks like, if you want to look up at me for a second, is a lot of times we see downward facing dog like this. Blasting, trying to get our face to the ground. My shoulder blades are so squeezed together on my back. It's not very comfortable, nor is it very stable for the shoulder girdle. So if I come out of it slightly, tricep wrap, externally rotate my arm bones, I may not be able to go down as low, but it's safer, more stable for the shoulders. It's a better stretch. Pushing down through the entire portion of my hand, especially the inner edges. They tend to get really light in downward facing dog here. So rooting down through the inner edges, pushing down and away, my head comes back to neutral. My feet are hip distance apart here, and I still want to think about squeezing my imaginary block between my shins. At the same time, and what makes it difficult is while I squeeze my imaginary block, I'm going to think about widening my sit bones out and back. Pushing the ground down and away while maintaining that tricep wrap. Getting a nice long spine here. Shift the weight into the left leg. Inhale the right leg straight and strong. Now don't inhale as high as you can. Keep the hips square so all 5 toes in the right foot point towards the ground. Even weight between the hands. Keep lifting, maybe tiny pulses. Then bend the right leg, open up the hips, so stack the right hip on top of the left. Use the strength of the right hamstring to curl the heel in towards the sit bone. Keep that heel curled in towards the sit bone as you begin to take some circles. Right foot is flexed here again. We always want the stretch to be in the hip, not the knee, and that really helps. Pause. Re-square the hips, so that means scissor the inner thighs closed. And on your next inhale, round forward, pulling your right knee in towards your nose. Push the ground away from you, just like you did in cat pose. Hug your right heel in towards your sit bone. Use that hamstring. Maybe you can step the right foot between the hands. If not, if it lands here, that's fine. You can either help it or take some extra steps to get your right foot between your hands. Right on the inside of your right thumb. Slowly lower the left knee. Now here's where, if you'd like a blanket or a towel under your left knee, you're more than welcome. You can keep your left toes tucked or untucked here. Scissor your inner thighs together. Maybe walk your right foot out to the right about 2 inches just for balance. Think about yourself on train tracks instead of heel to heel alignment. Again, scissor the inner thighs, so square the hips towards the front of the mat. Push down through the feet, magnetize them towards the midline, come up to a stand, and if you need to walk one hand on your leg at a time, that's fine. Here, we really want to focus on scissoring the inner thighs together. We also want to focus on tucking the tailbone. So we have a tendency in these low lunges to just kind of let the core dump forward, go into a really bad anterior tilt without any core engagement. And we don't stretch the hip flexor, which is one of the main points of this drill. So I want you to think about tucking your tailbone. Keep that. Maybe you can't go down very far at all, but gently lunge forward. If you'd like to, you can take your hands onto your right thigh, push down and away to create space between the low belly and the thigh, and gently rest into this stretch. So a lot of times we think about hip openers as like wide-legged forward fold and malasana, and we'll be getting there, but hip opening also means working on those hip flexors, the front of the hips, the quad attachment. Those can be really tight for people, especially if you do like a lot of lifting, a lot of running. So this tuck of the tailbone while we lunge forward is going to help with that. And again, we want to make sure this right knee isn't collapsing towards the midline. And if this ever gets too difficult, you can always have your hands on blocks as well. So, keeping our right foot slightly out to the side, I'm going to bring my right hand to the inner edge. Hands shoulder distance apart, so maybe that means I need to move my right foot out a few more inches. I'm moving into a lizard variation here. Now, I know my body, so I know I want to move my left knee back a little bit. But you do whatever feels comfortable for you. We're not worried about getting down to the ground here. We're worried about keeping a long spine while we send some stretch into the right hip and the left hip flexor. Here, I'm going to hug my right knee in towards my right shoulder. If you know another variation of lizard, such as coming down onto your forearms, or even down flat, you're totally welcome to. If it's more comfortable for you to peel to the outer edge of your foot, you're also welcome to, as long as you don't feel pain in the knee. If you are coming down onto your forearms, push your forearms into the ground and pull them towards you to catapult your sternum forward. Nice long spine. Keep hugging the right knee in towards the right shoulder here. And again, return to your breath. Maybe with every inhale, thinking about a little bit of length through the spine. And with every exhale, trying to soften into the posture just slightly. I can feel an ant crawling all over my back leg. It's okay. Just going to breathe through it. Take one more full round of breath here. And then wherever you are, slowly come back up to upright. You can leave your right foot outside of your right hand. Take your left hand, look down at it. Turn it out about 5 to 10 degrees. Push the ground down and away from you so you're not collapsing into the left shoulder. Curl your left heel in towards your sit bone using the strength of that hamstring. Again, if this hurts your back knee, you can always put it on a blanket. Reach your right arm up towards the sky, and again, push down the left hand so you're not dumping into that left shoulder. Reach long through the arms. Maybe reach back. Take the outer edge of your left foot. Now, if that's not comfortable for you, take your strap, wrap your strap around, and use that. If you can reach the outer edge of the foot, first press the foot into the hand into the foot. Create some tension there. And then, sounds a little counterintuitive, but back out of the stretch. So push down with the right foot, back out. Connect your heel towards your sit bone, or at least get it closer. Once you're there, keep that connection and then lunge forward. I'm dumping into my left shoulder here. Can you guys see that? So I need to push the ground away and also squeeze my shoulder blades gently onto my back, arcing my heart up towards the sky. Just saying hello to our quads. Even here, keeping that tricep wrap of the left arm, I'm not locking out, sending the eye of my elbow forward. You can see it shaking. That's because it's doing a lot of work. Carefully release. Walk your right foot back towards the center, hands on either side of the right foot. Tuck the left toes, lift the left knee. Push the ground down and away from you so that you can curl your right heel in towards your sit bone. Step back, plank pose just for a second here, then send the hips up and back. Downward facing dog. Great job, guys. Let's even ourselves out. So first, fix your downward facing dog. Bring your elbows wide, wrap them back. Generous bend in the knees. Sit bones out and wide. Navel pulled towards spine. Transfer the weight into the right leg. Inhale the left leg long behind you. Keep all 5 toes pointed towards the ground. This isn't a contest. I'm not worried about how high you can lift your left leg. Maybe tiny pulses. Yum. Wake up the hamstrings. Curl the left heel in towards the sit bone. Open the left hip, stack it on top of the right. Keep the left heel in really close to the sit bone. Foot is flexed as you take some generous hip circles. Moving slow. Trying to lubricate the hips here. Maybe go the other direction. It's a little awkward for me. Pause, re-square the hips. On your next inhale, round forward, pulling your left knee in towards your nose. Push the ground away from you, maybe coming up on your back tippy toes. Puff up the back of the heart. Maybe you can step your left foot between your hands. If not, no worries. Take a few steps to get there or use your hand to help you. Once you're there, lower the back knee. You can keep the toes untucked or tucked. Again, you can also place the back knee on a sweatshirt, a blanket, a towel. Walk the left foot out about 2 inches to the left. Magnetize the feet together. So think about pulling them together even though they don't move. That'll help you square the hips and turn on the legs so that you can carefully come up to a stand. Or not a stand, to a supported low lunge. Keeping your hands on your thighs or maybe on your hips. Now again, we want to go from this anterior kind of, it may look nice in the pictures, this kind of collapsed tilt to tucking the tailbone here. So anterior tilt, posterior tilt. You might feel a much greater stretch into the right hip flexor here, and you might not be able to go down nearly as far. That's totally fine. You could take your hands to your left thigh, push down and away from you to create space along the low belly, and help your left knee out to the left instead of letting it collapse into the right. It's just breathing some space into our right hip flexor now. Next breath slowly brings your hands to the inside of your left foot. Maybe take your left foot out another few inches to the left, moving into our lizard variation. So again, I know I like to back up my right knee, keeping my left knee hugged in towards my arms, thinking long spine here. And even here, when I think long spine, I don't collapse through the midline here. I pull my navel in and up, push my hands into the ground and drag them towards the back of the mat to pull my heart through. Same thing if you're going onto your forearms or even the side edge of your foot, think long spine here. And if this is not comfortable with your hands on the ground, you can take your hands up onto blocks. whatever is more comfortable. Bringing your knee in closer to your body will make this less of an intense stretch. So if that just feels horrible and feels like all kinds of things are tearing through your body, bring your knee in more to a 90-90 position. And here, just really focus on that long spine, because when we come into this shorter position, we have a tendency to kind of hunch. And while this thoracic flexion is good for some things like cat pose, it's not what we're focusing on here in this longer spine variation. Returning to your breath. Each inhale reminds us to lengthen. Each exhale reminds us to soften. Look down at your right hand, turn it out 5 to 10 degrees, bring your elbow wide, wrap it back, keep that micro bend, push down with that right hand. Curl your right heel in towards your sit bone. Keep it there. Reach your left arm up towards the sky. Length here. Push the ground down and away from you with the right hand so that you're not collapsing into the right shoulder. Maybe you reach back, grab the outer edge of the foot. Again, you can use your strap. Push your foot against your hand, hand against your foot. Then back out of this stretch. Bring your hips back to meet or towards your heel. Keep that connection. And then lunge forward. Once you're in a comfortable place, push the ground down and away from you. Squeeze your shoulder blades onto your back. Broaden your collarbones as you lift your sternum towards the sky. It's a full body active stretch. We're not just collapsing so that we can try to get a quad stretch here. Carefully release the back foot. Take your left hand to the outer edge of your left foot. Walk your left foot back towards the midline so you can plant your hands shoulder distance apart. Tuck the right toes, lift the right leg. Push the ground down and away from you. Puff up the back of the heart. Suck your left heel in towards your sit bone. Stay here for just a moment. Step back plank. Send the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Great job, guys. We are going to hop to Malasana or yogi squat. That's that wide baby-like squat at the front of the mat. You can also tiptoe there. It's really up to you. If you have an inversion practice and you wanted to take some donkey kicks all the way up, you're also welcome to do that. You can also just look up here and watch what I'm doing and then make your way into the posture. So I'm just going to take some little hops just to warm up. So in Malasana, my feet are hip distance to mat distance apart. They are either parallel or slightly turned out. So it's kind of up to you here. And then I'm sinking my sit bones low. Sometimes it helps to kind of first come into this nested Malasana, rounding again that flexion through the thoracic spine, letting yourself come down. And then once you wedge yourself between your legs, taking your triceps to your inner edges of your thighs and helping to lift your sternum up. Navel pull to spine here, that's going to help. Take your hands to prayer. Maybe touch your thumbs towards your sternum. Now, if this is not accessible or comfortable for you, you can place a block under your sit bones. If you're more up on your toes because your heels won't go down, you can place rolled up towels or blankets under your heels. So make this accessible. You don't want it to feel painful, especially not on the knees. It's just a great way to warm up your hips. If you are comfortable here, you can play with rocking back and forth slightly. If you need to sit on 3 blocks, it's cool. Nobody's judging. Sometimes I sit on blocks in Malasana. It's way more comfortable, not going to lie. If you'd like to challenge yourself, all we're going to be doing is coming down to a seat. But if you'd like the little extra challenge, come back into that nested position. So wiggle down, reach your fingers out wide, and use the counterbalance of you reaching forward to see if you could tuck the tailbone and very, 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 very slowly get kisses from the dog while you sit down. Hello, Koiko. This is Koiko, the construction puppy. He was rescued after he got hit by a motorcycle. That's why he has kind of a torqued out front leg. He's such a sweetie, but he's so naughty. He's only about 10 months old, though, so I guess he's allowed. He's mostly dachshund, some kind of other rat terrier, chihuahua mix. So we're moving into a Navasana or boat pose. You thought you were going to get away with Not doing any core in this hip flow, then you're crazy. If you've ever done one of Erin and my classes, you will never get away with doing no core. We'll work core into the most seemingly basic postures. So I'm removing the flesh from underneath my sit bones just to get a little bit better of a grounding position, rocking to the front edge of my sit bones. So that means coming to more of that anterior tilt. But while I do that, it's really important not to just lose the integration of my belly. I have to pull my navel to my spine while I do that and think about length. Because what tends to happen in boat pose is we kind of round like this, and then we still don't have core integration. It's just a mess. For our lower back, for our core, we're not really doing anything. So we want to pull to the front edges of our sit bones, pull our navel in and up, maybe take our hands behind our thighs, come to our toes, maybe lift the shins. If they do, press the big toe mounts together. Now, if this is too hard to maintain this straight spine here, you can take your hands behind you and watch this. See how I wrap my shoulder blades onto my back and down so that I'm not collapsing here. I'm just thinking about that nice long spine. If you're here and this feels pretty good, you can try straightening your legs, but don't sacrifice the length of the spine just to have straight legs. So we'll be here in this boat pose for a few breaths, whatever variation that means for you, and really just focus on length, leading up through the sternum and having your navel pull towards your spine. You have one leg, you're a mermaid. Keep your leg nice and tight. And again, returning to your breath, that tends to make everything feel better. Or so I'll say. Slowly release your feet back to the ground. Let's take one cat-cow in this position. So as you inhale, pull your hands onto your knees, pull your heart through your biceps, and exhale, navel pull to spine. Allow yourself to round. Coming back up to the front of your sit bones, moving into our next boat pose. So pick your poison, whatever position that is. If that was too easy for you with your arms out straight, you can lift your arms up overhead. So pick your challenging position and focus on form. It's okay if you shake, it's okay if you shiver. You can see my legs shivering here. Slowly release your toes. Let's take another cat-cow. So inhale, pull your heart through your biceps. Exhale, allow yourself to round. Hug your navel in towards your spine. Feel your shoulder blades separate. Coming back to your front sit bones. One more time, let's go into our boat pose. So maybe challenge yourself a little bit this time, knowing that it's the last one. Whatever position that means for you. Focus on length of the spine. And return to your breath. Slowly release your toes. One more cat-cow. Inhale, heart forward. Exhale, round. And this time as you round, release. Roll all the way onto your back. Pull your knees in towards your chest. Pavana Muktasana, so both knees in towards the midline. Wrapping your arms around your shins. Maybe grasping opposite elbows if that's comfortable, but not necessary. And squeezing everything into compression. Then releasing the elbows, bring your hands to your shins and beginning to rock up and down along the spine. We're going to be meeting all the way in chair pose, so Utkatasana. So you're going to need a little bit of momentum to get there. And once you do get there, let's do the variation of chair pose today with our feet together. So big toe mounts together, a sliver of space between the heels. Now again, the pelvic positioning comes into play in our chair pose. A lot of times we see a chair that looks like this. Whoops. And a lot of times we see a chair that looks like this. Neither are really what we're aiming for today. We want a nice straight spine. So for most people that means a very gentle tuck of the tailbone, just a very gentle one. Navel pulled in towards the spine. If this is a lot for you, keep your hands on your thighs like we did in that Anjaneyasana, that low lunge. Push them down and away from you to create the space between your low belly and your thighs. If you prefer, you can bring your hands to heart center, press your thumbs into your sternum lightly, sink a little bit deeper. Rock to the inner edges of your feet here. Hug your big toe mounts together. Pull your shoulder blades down and together on your back. Sink a little bit deeper. Inhale, stand up, release, shake it out. Great, guys. Moving on, a little bit more hip opening. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead. Exhale, hinge at the hips, fold forward, making our way into forward fold. First forward fold of the day here. So I want you to bend the knees generously, almost like it's more of a ragdoll position with our feet together. Now you can bring your hands to the ground. You can bring your hands to blocks. You can bring your hands to shins here. What we're aiming for is a long spine, not getting our face to our knees or our face to the ground, but long spine, whatever that means. So take some bend in the knees if that's what you need. Next inhale lifts you up halfway, spine and gaze long, maybe coming up under fingertips here, or even bring your hands to your shins or your thighs, just not to your knees. And as you exhale, plant the hands shoulder distance apart, step back, plank pose. Holding this plank pose here for just a second. Attention to the arms. Are you locking them out? Wing the elbows wide. Wrap them towards the back of the mat, keeping the micro bend. Feel the shoulder blades separate. Your hips can be up a little bit higher, almost towards your shoulders here. It's easier to maintain a hollow position. A lot of times we see a plank that looks like this. Not really getting either an arm or a core workout here. All I'm doing is really kind of damaging my low back. So keep the hips higher, lead out through the crown of the head and back through the heels. Super engaged. Lower the knees. Lean forward, tip the shoulders past the wrist, bend the elbows straight back, pull your navel towards your spine as you lower all the way to your belly. Now, coming up onto your forearms, place your elbows right underneath your shoulders. So your elbows are going to be shoulder distance apart. You can separate your feet about hip distance. And even here, rock to the inner edge of the elbows, so pretend you're hugging an imaginary block between your forearms, but at the same time, pull your shoulder blades down and together in your back. Tuck your tailbone, take this out of the low back. If we don't tuck the tailbone, we just kind of sink down and let our belly rest on the mat. We want to tuck the tailbone. We want this to be more about the upper and thoracic back, and then we're going to move into the quads a little bit. So keeping my left arm how it is, kink your right arm in 45 degrees. Push that forearm down and away from you to give yourself a little bit more lift. Curl your left heel in towards your sit bone. Use the strength of that hamstring. It's a big muscle. It's big muscles, actually. Make them work for you. Now, again, just like we did with the quad stretch, pushing your right forearm down and away, reach your left arm up and back to the inside edge of your foot. If it does not reach, no worries. You have your strap or your scarf or your tie. Push your hand into your foot into your hand, and then maybe pull your foot in towards your sit bone, trying to re-square your shoulders towards the front of the mat. Now, if you know the flip grip variation where you curl the toes in, curl the fingers over the toes, elbow points towards the sky, that's fine as well. What we're really focusing on here is turning the shoulders back towards the front of the mat. My right leg is still nice and engaged here, and I don't want to worry about pulling my left heel down to the ground. Instead, I just want to pull it down towards my left sit bone and keep my legs hugging in towards the midline. Tuck of the tailbone again. We'll send this stretch more into the quad and the hip flexor instead of just allowing space in the low back. Carefully release without slingshotting your foot. Moving towards the other side here, so kinking the left forearm in towards the midline, pushing down and away. Keep the left leg nice and engaged. Curl the right heel in towards the sit bone. Reach back, inside edge of the right foot. Press the foot into the hand into the foot. Maybe I curl my foot in towards my sit bone, re-square my shoulders. Maybe I take the flip grip variation, which we can go over in another class. Really trying not to collapse into this left arm here, so pushing down and away, tucking my tailbone to send this stretch into my right quad, my right hip flexor. Carefully release without slingshotting. Take my hands underneath my shoulders, push back child's pose. So that's knees wide, feet together, sit bones sinking towards the heels. My torso comes to rest in between my body, long spine. If this is not comfortable, you can place a bolster, a bunch of blankets, whatever under your torso. You can even have blocks if that's not too uncomfortable, or blocks with a blanket on top. Reaching our fingertips down in front of you. So what I want to try to do here is sink the sit bones low onto the heels, but also keep reaching the fingers forward. So I get a side body stretch while I'm getting compression along the front of the hips. My forehead can rest gently down onto the mat. I'm just not doing that because then you guys can't hear me. The microphone gets all muffled. And just trying to return to our breath one more time, sinking in. Softening with each exhale. Next inhale rounds you forward to tabletop, and if you're like me, you might need to correct your tabletop a little bit, pulling your knees in so that they're underneath your hips. Again, wing your elbows wide, wrap them towards the back of the mat. Moving into a tiger pose variation here, since we did do a little bit of warming up of the quads as well as work with the hamstrings, and those all have to do with the hips. So shifting the weight into the right shin bone and the left hand, I want to extend the left leg behind me. Curl the heel in towards the sit bone, maybe not all the way, maybe just 90 degrees here. Flex the foot. Push the ground down and away. Find some lift. Tent those right fingertips. Maybe I can reach back and grab the inside edge of the ankle. Again, you have your strap. And then I want to think about kicking the ankle away from me. Now, I'm not collapsing into the core here because I want to think about the gentle tuck of the tailbone as I pull my shin bone away from me. It's going to help to stretch my right shoulder. This is a tiger pose variation. No need to go too deep with the back bend. Slowly release, moving to the other side. Extend the right leg. Curl the heel in towards the sit bone, flex the foot. Up on those left fingertips, push the ground down and away from you. Find some lift. Gentle tuck of the tailbone, reach back. Maybe you can grab the inside edge of the foot. Maybe use your strap. Pull the leg away from you, straight back here. Not up to the side, not over towards the left. Straight away from you. Get a gentle shoulder stretch. Wake up that hamstring a little bit more. Not locking out through the right arm, keeping that tricep wrap. Carefully release. Tuck the toes, squeeze your imaginary block between your forearms, lift the knees and hover. Send the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Inhale the right leg straight and strong. Exhale, pull your right knee in towards your nose. Round forward, puff up the back of the heart. Again, we're stepping our foot between our hands, so if it doesn't make it there, just wiggle, slide, pick it up, get it there so that's on the inner edge of your right thumb. Walk it out an inch or so. Put yourself on train tracks. Scissor your inner thighs together. Think about magnetizing your feet towards the midline. Find some grounding through the legs. Maybe take one hand to your right thigh. Keeping up a generous bend into the left knee here. Maybe taking the other hand, coming up. Crescent pose. Now, in this crescent pose variation, we're going to do the same thing that we did in the low lunge. We want to think about backing out of this, bending the back knee, tucking the tailbone. We don't want to lunge forward. We want to stretch the left hip flexor. So tuck the tailbone, scissor the inner thighs together towards the front of the mat. Maybe you can't go as deep. That's just fine. Again, keep the right knee out to the side, not collapsing in, and lunge forward. Maybe getting towards parallel with this right thigh, but not necessary. Take your hands to your hips, straighten your right leg. Pivot to the left edge, long edge of your mat. Now, if you had your feet out in train tracks, you might need to walk your right toes up a little bit so that they're nice and parallel. We want our feet parallel, maybe even toes slightly turned in here. Moving into a wide-legged forward fold. And this can be a hard posture for a lot of people. So if you need to find a bend in the knees first and think about long spine that way, bring the blocks out in front of you to rest your hands on, that's completely fine. We don't want to sacrifice length of the spine just to get our head towards the ground. This is both a spinal lengthener, a hip stretch, a hamstring stretch. So go into it carefully and slowly. If you can maintain the straight legs, think about rocking to the inner edges of the feet and almost magnetizing the feet together like you were trying to squeeze them towards the midline. So you should turn on your inner thighs, your adductors, which are big muscles, and should do some work for us. So keeping the navel pulled in towards the spine, we're going to be folding forward with a flat back as much as comfortable. Trying to keep the hips over the heels here, not sending them back to counterbalance. Maybe bringing our hands towards the ground, maybe bringing them on blocks. Again, if you need to bend your knees, do so, but send the knees out wider slightly. If you can fold to the forearms, feel free to do so. Instead of thinking about dragging the top of your head towards the ground, think about reaching your sternum towards the ground. So you widen your sit bones out and back, and as you do this, you pull your navel in and up. Make sure your feet haven't gotten lazy. Rock to the inner edges slightly. Turn on your adductors, your inner thighs. And and breathe. Another one of those poses that being in it a little longer can help you open just a little bit more. Wherever you are in the stretch, come back up to a half lift so that spine and gaze long. Really ignite the legs. Maybe put a micro bend in them to help you if you need to bring your hands to your hips or walk your hands up a wall or a chair. Coming back up to stand. Let's take star pose for just a minute here. So extend the arms up and out. Turn the feet out towards the corners of your mat. Heels in slightly. Whole body strong. So engage the legs, lift the quads, tuck the tailbone just slightly. Now bend into the knees, coming into goddess. If you want to take your hands down towards your thighs and push your thighs down and away from you, that's fine. Now there are variations of goddess, just like there are variations of chairs. A lot of times we see the hips kind of stuck out behind us in this anterior tilt. And why don't we just all do this for just a second here. Pull your navel to your spine to protect your low back, but allow your sit bones to kind of go out and buoyant behind you. Spread your booty. And then work into the opposite. You may have to back out slightly as you tuck the tailbone, pulling your navel firmly towards your spine, thinking length through the spinal column, widening your knees out. If you need your hands on a railing, on a chair, find a prop to help you. Again, never sacrifice safety just for the look of a posture. Tiny pulses can sometimes feel good in goddess pose, but if it feels like something is tearing or ripping in your groin or hamstring region, avoid it. Be smart. No one knows what's going on in your body but you. One more breath here in your goddess pose. And then we're going to be bending deeply into the left leg, straightening the right leg, maybe bringing the hands down towards the mat. You can come up onto your right heel here and maybe slide that foot out slightly, moving into Skandasana or Ardha Malasana. The hips may come down low. They may have to stay up higher. You'll have to experiment with this a little bit. Widen the left knee out. Get to a place that's comfortable for you. Again, if it's comfortable for you to come down low but you can't support it, guess what? A block under the sit bones feels great. Once you are in a comfortable spot, dig your right heel into the mat and magnetize it towards your left foot. That's going to help turn on this right hamstring, because a lot of times when we do hamstring stretching, it's more passive than active, and that's how we can tear the hamstring. And look at this leg. It's not very active right now. I need to lift up my quad, flex my foot, and really engage. My hands can be in front of me. They can be out to the side like a ninja. They can be at my heart in prayer. There's all kinds of wasps flying around today, guys. I don't know what's up. It's like the height of wet season right now, so it's like all the life is out and about. We're going to be moving to the other side. So for most of us, that means coming up a little bit higher, maybe taking our fingertips towards the ground, transferring the bend into the right leg, toes towards the top corner of the mat, coming up into the left heel, sinking the sit bones as low as feels comfortable for us, and finding our hand position. Dig the left heel in, magnetize it towards the right foot, ignite this left leg. Returning to our breath. It's getting a little sweaty over here, but that's also because it's like 95 degrees, so. Coming out of this just slightly, we're going to be turning back to the front of the mat, and if you just turn your body, you find that you end up kind of in this supported lunge. Maybe your back knee is bent, that's fine. See if you can push the ground down and away from you. Hug your right heel in towards your sit bone. Step back plank pose. Downward facing dog. Shifting to our other side, inhale the left leg long. Exhale, pull your left knee in towards your nose, round forward, push the ground away, create the space to step your left foot between your hands, or get it there. Walk your left toes out a few inches, magnetize your feet together, scissor your inner thighs, root down firmly through the feet. Bring your left hand towards your left thigh, and then your right. As you come up, bend your right knee, tuck the tailbone so that we shift the stretch into the right hip flexor instead of the low back. Bending deeply into the left knee, moving it out instead of letting it collapse in. Maybe your hands come to your hips or up or on chairs or on one chair. Find something that works for you. Carefully straighten the front leg. This time we're moving to the right long edge of our mat. Again, if you had your feet on train tracks, you might need to move your left toes up a little bit. Toes in, heels out just slightly, slight pigeon toe. Moving into our wide-legged forward fold. It might feel a little bit easier since we've done a little bit more stretching now. Inhale, length through the crown of the head. Exhale, hinge the hips. Fold forward. Maybe bring your hands down, your fingertips down. Maybe sliding the weight back and forth between your hips. See if that allows you to sink a little deeper while still maintaining that length through the spine. And again, if your knees are bent here, that's perfectly fine. Just keep the core nice and engaged. Navel pulling in and up as if you could slide it underneath your rib cage. Next inhale brings you back to your halfway lift. A generous bend in the knees here. Magnetize the feet towards the midline. See if you can rise up with a flat back, maybe taking your hands to your hips. Arms up overhead, out wide star pose. Toes out, heels in. Bend the knees deeply, goddess pose. Hands to the hips, or maybe hands to the thighs. Pressing the thighs down and away from you. And again, just experiment with the difference in pelvic positioning. So allow the sit bones to kind of flare out behind you. Widen your booty, get low, sink into the shoulders. Give a little stretch that way if it feels okay. And then come out of it slightly, tuck the tailbone, pull the navel in and up, straight spine, widen the knees. Sink a little bit deeper, maybe go back to your tiny goddess dancing. That usually makes it feel a little bit better for me. This is not a pleasant pose to be in. Then moving back to our Skandasana, first into the right leg, bending deeply into the right leg, bringing our hands down, maybe coming up into the left heel. Adjust your feet if needed. Drag your left heel in towards your right foot. Turn on this left hamstring. Won't be here long. And carefully moving towards the other side, bending into the left knee, straightening the right, digging the right heel in, magnetizing it towards the left. Lifting up through the sternum, engage this right quad. My quads always get so lazy on me. Coming out of this, just slightly turning back towards the front of the mat. Yes. Pull your left heel in towards your sit bone, step back plank pose. Send the hips up and back, down dog. Again, we'll be meeting in Malasana or yogi squat. If you'd like to take some hops or if you'd like to do a nice, calm, tranquil tiptoe to get there, you're welcome to. We're never in a rush, even if everyone around you is. You're not in a rush. Sink the sit bones low, feet can be parallel or slightly turned out. So we're going to be coming back to a seat. If you'd like to do that little test where you reach your fingers out wide and lower your sit bones slowly, you're welcome to. And then I'm going to face you guys. You don't need to. I just want you to be able to see what's going on. We're moving into some deeper hip stretches, cow face pose, fire log pose, wide-legged forward fold. So with cow face pose, let's start by bringing our left heel in towards our right sit bone and almost trying to point our left knee towards the front of the mat. Bring your right ankle across. And first plant your foot. See if this is comfortable for you. You want to be able to ground down through both sit bones. Now, if you can do so without pushing on your knees, see if you can squeeze the sit bones gently together and maybe walk your right ankle in, dropping your right knee on top of your left. Now, this is a very intense stretch, so there's no need to force it there. If it feels uncomfortable, placing a block or a blanket between, or even just focusing on more of this preparation for a Ardha Matsyendrasana or half Lord of the Fishes twist is great. So hugging in and up on the knee instead of pushing it down. Want to think about squeezing the sit bones gently together, grounding down firmly through both sit bones. If you are in cow face pose, there's no need to take the arm variation here. For this variation, again, there's so many variations of every posture. Just try to hug your heels in close towards your sit bones. Push down through the knife edges of the feet so the ankles don't get lazy. And tone the core. Always tone the core. If you'd like to fold forward, you can. That'll send a little bit deeper stretch along the hips, but only fold forward if your knees are comfortably stacked over each other, because if your knee is up here and you try to fold forward, you're either going to be hunching and rolling, or you're going to be forcing your knee down, which is not what we're going for here. We're thinking about long spine as we fold, so tilting the front of the sit bones, but still keeping our core engaged. I'm folding, almost like I could bring my sternum way past my knees and reach it out in front of me. A lot of people hate this posture, so if you do, know that you're not alone. Slowly coming out of it, moving into fire log, which is traditionally a deeper stretch, at least for most. I'm going to uncross my right leg just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. My left leg moves from this kind of arrow position to more of a 90-degree position. So really important to flex the foot here in fire log pose. And my both my left knee and my left foot are 90-90s, right? Then I'm going to take my right knee, pull it in towards my chest, lift up, flex my right foot, really strong in the ankle here, take my left hand, and slowly begin to move my left foot over so that the ankle hangs just on the outside edge of my left knee, okay? Now, again, I don't want to force this knee down. Both my feet are super flexed. Really important to keep that the whole time so that this stays in the hip. If this is where you're comfortable, cool, stay here, or even, create yourself a little block prop. You might have to find something a little more stable than that. But find yourself some way of supporting this leg if it feels like it's just hanging and painful. If you can, gently squeeze your sit bones together as if someone were pressing into the outer edges of your hip. Maybe you can start to, without using your hands, just using your hip muscles, lower this right knee down. Ideally, we're going for shin over shin. That will never happen for some hips. You do not need to worry about it. Focus on keeping the nice, strong flex of the feet. Focus on keeping pain out of the knees, grounding down through both sit bones. If one sit bone is lifted in this pose, you can always put a blanket underneath it. It's usually the top leg. That sit bone will be lifted. And again, if your shins are stacked, your feet are flexed, and you'd like to take this fold, it's not a hunch and a roll. It's a lengthening through the spine, almost trying to drag our belly button past our shin bones. If your forearms, your hands are on the ground, you can press them into the ground and pull them towards you, just like we did in that lizard, to catapult your heart forward. But again, don't worry about the fold. First, worry about opening the hips, send breath to the tight part of the hips. Slowly come back up. Let's take the other leg. So again, I said after deep flexion of the hips or the knees, it's always nice to straighten them. So straighten your legs, squeeze your knees. If you need your hand behind you while you do this, that's totally cool. Moving into the other side of cow face pose. This time my right leg is going to come heel in towards the left sit bone, and I'm going to tuck this foot underneath. It's a little awkward to get into it in slow motion. Ideally aiming to get my right knee up towards the top of the mat. I'm towards the side of the mat. You guys would be towards the top. Crossing my left foot, bringing my left heel in close to my right sit bone. This is a great place to start. If I feel comfortable, I can begin to point or semi-point this left foot and drop the left knee down, trying to ground down through both sit bones here. Again, never pressing firmly into this knee, putting props between the knees if needed, focusing on sitting up straight. So this is a great pose to do with your back against a wall or something heavy that doesn't move. Really strong chair or couch. A lot of these straight spine postures, if you feel like you can't keep your spine straight, either have a friend help you and tell you, because sometimes it's easier that way, or sit against something that doesn't move and that will help you affirm that you are straight. If you're folding, again, long spine, but even as I keep long spine, I'm not letting go of my core and just dumping. Navel pulled in and up. Folds. Slowly release, moving into fire log. So I'm going to uncross my left leg, bring my right leg to 90-90 here, approximately 90-90. It's a little less than 90 in the knee, but that's okay. Really strong ankle. Hug my left knee in towards my left armpit, just like we did at the beginning of class. Strong ankle. Take my hand to my left ankle, cross. Bring my left ankle just to the outer edge, my left foot just to the outer edge of the left knee. Stay here. Re-squaring the shoulders towards the front, maybe placing some props between my knees. Feet are super flexed, or begin to tone the outer hips. So squeeze the sit bones together just slightly. Maybe my knee drops close or closer towards my right foot. Stay here. Or if this is comfortable with shin on shin, you can lean forward, long spine, finding your way into a folded fire log. Agni Stambhasana, sometimes called double-legged pigeon. Everything has a lot of names, both in English. Usually I say usually just one Sanskrit name, but that's not really true, depending on the school, a variety of Sanskrit names, and definitely multiple English names. Slowly release. Uncross, straighten, squeeze. Moving into a Janu Shirshasana variation. So there's a lot of variations of Janu Shirshasana. One might be more of this kind of figure four position, like it's kind of figure four, but with the foot flat to the inside of the thigh. Today let's move more to the shin variation. So if this is already enough of a stretch for you, stay here with the nice right angle of the left knee and the right foot. If you'd like to go a little bit further, you can pull the left toes in closer towards the sit bone and almost roll to the top of the foot and the shin here, widening the left knee out. Keep the right toes nice and active. Now we're going to be ending up turning to bend over this right foot, so keep that in mind here. What I like to do is take my right hand to the outer edge of my right hip. Inhale the left arm up and side bend just a little bit. Find some length along the left side body. Pull your navel in and up and begin to turn, almost like you were trying to turn your torso past your whole right leg. Bring your left hand to the outer edge of your right foot, or close, outer edge of your right shin cap. You could take your right hand there too, and pushing your hands down and away from you, you can pull your navel in and up to continue that twist. Long spine here, just like always. Maybe keeping the twist of the torso, you can bring your left hand to the inner edge of your right foot, or right calf, right thigh, just not the right knee, and slowly begin to fold. Now we're not worried about bringing the forehead to the knee. I'm almost thinking about touching my sternum towards my toes here. If one of your sit bones is lifted or uncomfortable, a blanket underneath it can help. And remember, you can always go back to this position where you'll find it much easier to keep the torso turned over the right front leg. If your hands are on your feet, you can pull on your feet, flexing your toes more and helping to propel your heart forward. Slowly release. Let's move to the other side. So pick your position, whether it's more this figure four, or we widen our right knee out more, come to the top of the foot. So now we're at a little bit more than 90 degrees. Sprinkle your left hand. Inhale your right arm up, side body long. Pull your navel towards your spine. Turn the torso past your left leg if possible. Reach the hand forward. Bring your left hand forward. Pull your navel in and up, long spine, so tilt to the front edge of your sit bones. Maybe you can take your right hand to the inner edge of your left foot, your left hand to the outer edge, or your calf, or your shin, or your thigh, or the ground, or blocks. We're focusing on length through the spine here, not rounding forward. This is not one of those places where we want that spinal flexion. Slowly release. Take one wide-legged forward fold. I suggest you start about 90 degrees. Remove the flesh from underneath your sit bones so you can get a better grounding position. If you need to start with your back against a wall so you feel like you're not slumping, that's fine. Really engage your legs. Engage them so much that your heels almost come off the ground. Now we want to move forward just as much as we can maintain that straight spine, which is the same thing when we did our standing wide-legged bend. So keep that in mind. We're not trying to just get our face to the ground. We want to think about leading through the sternum, pulling my navel in and up, so closing the space between my low ribs and my hip points while I lean forward. Trying to keep the toes widening out. They have a tendency for some people to drip in, so internal rotation of the legs. We want external rotation of the legs. Maybe walking our fingertips forward. And what can help here to keep that straight spine is to dig your fingertips in and pull them towards the back of the mat to rock you towards the front sit bones. If you'd like to come down to your forearms, you can. Continuing that pulling motion with your forearms. And just taking another few moments to breathe into the hips here. Softening with every exhale. Lengthening with every inhale. Maybe your hips are starting to feel a little bit more limber. Maybe not. That's okay. Have patience. Hamstrings and hips, always have patience. Always have patience with all of your body, but especially those areas. Slowly walk your hands back towards center. I'm going to turn back towards the front, which is where you're turned anyway, and make your way onto your back. If you have any tiny puppies in your way, carefully move them. Try not to disturb their nap, but I always do. Sorry, Zipper. We're going to be coming into Supta Gustasana, or hand to big toe. So if you'd like a strap, and I'm going to use one. I'm going to keep my left foot planted so my left knee is towards the sky. First, I'm going to hug my right knee in towards my chest, and then out towards my armpit. Heel in towards the sit bone, back towards my chest. Flexing the foot. Take the strap around the ball mound of the foot, so that's right underneath the toes. Works better if you have like a little loop in the strap instead of just a big loop so that you can tighten it. Keeping the left leg active but bent, my left hand on my left thigh, I'm going to start to straighten the right foot towards the ceiling. And if it gets to here, that's fine. If it straightens all the way, that's fine. Keep the right foot flexed. Think about plugging the right leg bone into the hip, so grounding down through the right hip. Dropping the right shoulder down. Again, it's fine if your leg is bent. If you'd like to give it a little bit of a tug, almost like you were trying to kiss your right toes towards the back of your mat. Trying to keep your low back on the floor here. There's no need to go very deep. We didn't do a lot of hamstring work today. If you'd like to do this without a strap, you can take your hand to your right calf, your right thigh, your right foot. Your peace fingers are on your right big toe. It's really your choice here. Keep your right leg nice and active, whether it's bent or straight, lifting the quad. Slowly release. Plant your right foot. Hug your left knee in towards your chest, towards your armpit, towards your chest. Take your strap if you'd like it. Hook it around the ball of your left foot. Grab onto your strap with your left hand or whatever you'd like to grab. I'm going to use my peace fingers to grab my big toe and begin to straighten the left leg as much as it feels comfortable, flexing the left foot. Feels comfortable around straight, you can begin to gently tug your right thigh in towards your low belly, getting a deeper stretch along the hamstring. Sending breath to the back of your left leg. Our hamstrings are typically very different. My left is always so much tighter and more angry than my right, even though I work on it a lot, but it's just naughty. It's my naughty side for now. For now. I know that's going to change, right? Slowly release. Keeping our feet about hip distance apart, just start to rock your knees back and forth, so windshield wiper them side to side. And the next time they drop over to the right, leave them there. If this is uncomfortable for you in any way, you can back out. You can place a block or blanket between your knees. You can also take another variation, which is a little bit easier on the knees, which might be extending the right leg and crossing the left knee over the body into a spinal twist. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper in this just kind of drop knee position, you can flex your right foot, cross your right ankle over your left thigh above the knee, and use that foot to kind of pull down and away from you onto that left thigh, stretching out the left hip flexor. Slowly coming back to center. Flap the knees back and forth again a few times to lubricate. And then allow them to rest over towards the left. Again, if this is uncomfortable, straighten the left leg, cross the right knee over the body to come into this twist. If you'd like more, cross the left ankle over the right thigh. Flex the left foot really firmly. And use that foot to kind of pull down and away from you, stretching the skin along the right hip flexor. Slowly come back up through center. Let's take a happy baby here. So using the strength of your low belly, pull your knees in towards your armpits. Take your arms between your knees and then open them to the outer edges of the feet. So take the outer edges of your feet. And again, if you need a strap, that's totally fine. Flex the feet. Begin to point the soles of the feet towards the sky. Dripping your tailbone down to the earth so spine is long even here. Use the weight of your hands. You don't necessarily have to pull on your feet. It's just the weight of your arms tugging down gently. Gravity on the weight of your legs. As you drip your knees down, your tailbone down. Finding one last hip opener. Slowly release, pull your knees in towards your chest, wrap your arms around your shins, hug everything into a little ball. Pavana Muktasana, reach your forehead up towards your knees, squeeze your face, squeeze all the muscles in your body. And release. Now you can release to Shavasana, corpse pose. Of course the dogs are barking. Or if you'd like to rock up for just a second, if this is the first time you're doing this video, after we've been doing a lot of hip opening, it can be really helpful. Our legs want to externally rotate a lot because that's what we've been doing the whole time. And it can be really helpful to stop that external rotation during our Shavasana and keep more of a neutral position. So if you take a blanket or a towel or a sweatshirt and you open it enough so that your feet are hip distance apart, you can keep your legs nice and not active, but just turned in a neutral position tucking the blanket underneath you so that you don't have to use any muscular movement or holds to keep your legs from turning out. The blanket does it for you. From here, putting my hands behind me, dragging back just slightly to elongate my low back. I'm going to come down into my final rest or shavasana. Palms up wide. Release any holds you have on your breath. Close your eyes and settle into your mat. So if that means setting a timer for yourself for 3, 5, 10 minutes, just make sure you give yourself some time to settle and to process and to download, and then you always wake up slowly. Bonus points if you have puppies to share this space with you. And once you're done with your rest, if you have any comments or feedback or future classes you'd like to see on here, please feel free to leave them in the comments or to email them to me. Thank you for practicing with me. Enjoy your resting pose.